This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Right now, thank you for tuning in to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, brought to you by MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid. I'm your host, Tate, and today on the football program, we're going to be talking about a little bit about Ezekiel Elliott, Vontaze Burfict. Matthew Stafford got a brand new contract. Brown's got a brand new quarterback, and we're going to finish up with talking about Julian Edelman getting injured and out for the season, and how important preseason really is. So that's what we're going to be covering today. We're also, just going to start off the top is the fact that football season is here, guys. We got college football games going on to start off the week this week. There's two games that I'm really excited about. Of course, that Alabama game, Alabama versus Florida State. The winner of this game really sets them up for a serious shot at making it to the playoffs. It's kind of crazy to have a pivotal game this early, as the first game of the year. But if Florida State was to beat Alabama right out the gate, it really sets them up to make a nice run this year. Clemson's going to be a little bitty, maybe not as tough as they were last year, coming off that national championship hangover. Florida State has a schedule that they could run the table. They have a true shot. If they win this game here, they got a true shot at going, from start to finish and making the playoffs. Now you look at the opposite end of that is if they lose, they have no choice but to be perfect the rest of the year. They're gonna need they would need a lot of help. The nice thing is, if they did lose, it would be to Alabama, first game of the year, but they would have to be perfect the rest of the year. Now, Alabama, on the other hand, they go into this and they win against Florida State, and they're once again set up to be the best team. I think the SEC is down this year. I don't really see anyone really giving them a true competition as far as winning the SEC. I think Alabama has that sewed up, and I think with the exception of a hiccup, I think only way Alabama loses after this game is Georgia's going to be tough. There's going to be a number of tough games there. But Alabama will have to beat themselves to not run the table. So this game really sets them up. Also, if Alabama was to win this game, this gives them the breathing room in which, even if they did lose to, let's say, a Georgia or someone like that, they would still have an inside track into making the playoffs. Florida State, though, I think if Florida State loses, they would have to be pretty much perfect, and I think it'd be a really tough way for them I think it'd be hard. It'll be a hard road for them. Alabama could go to this game, lose it, and still make the playoffs. Another game that's this week is an interesting game. This is a game where, and that's that in Texas Stadium, that's Florida versus Michigan. Now, this is the perfect game for Michigan to get off to a fast start. Florida has 8 players that's going to be out this game due to suspension. This is a chance for Harbaugh and Michigan to really jump out to a fast start and contend for that Big Ten championship. A lot of people, because they lost so many starters, don't really look at Michigan as a true contender for the Big Ten title. But I don't look at it that way. I look at it as Michigan may have lost a lot of starters, but they've had some killer recruiting classes. This is a young team that is super talented, and they're going up against Florida, who doesn't have all their players, and so this is a perfect time for them to jump in. As far as I do see Michigan winning this game. They jump out, they beat Florida. This could set them up to make a run at that Big Ten title. And I got to say, the Big Ten, in my opinion, is the best conference in the nation. I know a lot of SEC fans will disagree with me on that, but the Big Ten has some serious playoff contenders this year. Everyone knows Ohio State, who could be the best team in the nation. Then you look at Penn State. Penn State is right there just to start the season off. And then Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a pretty easy path if they don't slip up. Michigan is that on the outside looking in right now, but Michigan could truly make a run. Nebraska is another team that is just really strong. The Big Ten is loaded, and I'd be shocked to see the Big Ten get a couple teams in to the playoffs this year. And I know we're talking a little early, but we're just talking about kind of like preseason, with the start of the college football season, just kind of like my take on how some of these games and some of these teams could really set themselves up very early in the year. So, and then if we're talking about the national championship and the playoffs, the question is, who are the teams that I look at that could make that national championship game? And one of the things, just free flowing here and just thinking about the college football season in general. When I start thinking about who could really contend and make a shot at the playoffs, first off, Ohio State. Ohio State is going to be hard to beat. Of course, Alabama has a shot. Florida State has to win. That's a very tough order to get through Alabama right out the gate. So I look at Ohio State, Alabama, and then I got USC. USC, they got to watch out for UCLA, but USC could really run the table this year. USC could be back. And then that last spot, do you give it to someone like Florida State? Do you give it to someone like Penn State? Clemson? I look at it and I say, I'm going to give it if Florida State can win this weekend, I put Florida State in as my fourth team. as far as who could make the playoffs. Another question that kind of pops up that people ask me is, who would be your dark horse, that team that nobody's talking about that truly could have a shot at making the playoffs that no one, is thinking about? And for me, it's Wisconsin, which I know a lot of people are looking at, and the other one is Louisville. Louisville, they're a really talented team with a really good quarterback, a schedule that's not strong but not overly tough. Louisville could easily run the table and make the playoffs. So if I was going to go to MyBookie.ag and I was going to place a bet and I was going on a wild flyer, it would be Louisville. Louisville would be the team that I would really be, if I'm going to, just go out on a limb and say, give me someone that no one is thinking about. Also, another team that could shock some people is Miami. I think Miami could be very tough this year. And that's another team that no one is really thinking about right now. But this is one of those chances where Miami could really make a big leap and get back into that contending for a national championship picture. I don't think they will, but Miami's going to make some noise this year. That concludes me talking about college football for right now. We will be talking about a lot of college football throughout the season, guys and girls. And so we'll be talking about a lot more of that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the situation in Dallas with Ezekiel Elliott. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Ever since I started hosting this podcast, people have come to me for advice. Hey, who are you taking this week in the big game? Are you taking the Patriots or the Steelers? Or Chicago or Detroit? Or who do you have in the big fight? Well, let me tell you this. Before I tell them who I have in the game this week or the fight this weekend, I tell them that it's just as important as where you're betting as who you're betting on. And I always use MyBookie.ag. MyBookie.ag has been around for years. They got a solid reputation. And the most important thing is they pay you out fast. There's nothing worse than winning a big, betting on making the right decision, picking the right team to win, and then you have to jump through all these hoops and hurdles to get paid. You don't have these issues with MyBookie.ag. Their payouts is as fast as within 2 days. And that's what I like best about them is I can place my bet, get my win, and collect my money. They have in-game, live betting, and some of the most rewarding perks in the business. They also have an all-new mobile site that makes wagering on the go a breeze. Join now, and MyBookie will match your deposit with a 100% bonus. Use promo code GSMC Sports to activate this offer. Visit MyBookie.ag today. You play, you win, you get paid.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
right. And we're back. We just got done talking about a little bit of college football because the college football season is here this weekend, and the following weekend the NFL season starts. But before the NFL season starts, we got a little matter to handle in Big D as we talk about Ezekiel Elliott is having his appeal hearing this week. He got suspended 6 games for domestic violence, and he is appealing the 6-game suspension. Now I'm going to give you my take on it. First off, I'm not a proponent. I mean, I'm not big on protecting anyone when it comes to domestic violence. It's a horrible thing. Should never happen, especially and an athlete the caliber of Ezekiel Elliott or Ray Rice. But it doesn't matter if you're a football star, baseball star, or just a guy that just regular Joe. There's no room for domestic violence. With that being said, I have a problem with this suspension. This is a suspension where the police investigated the situation. They came up with there was no evidence to pursue a domestic violence case against Ezekiel Elliott. There was enough information out there with a woman talking about she's going to ruin his career, and there was some extortion type situation going on. Like I said, there's absolutely no evidence. And that's one of the things Jerry Jones said is that, there's just no evidence. And today, a lot of people really beat up on Jerry Jones for making a statement because he came out on the side of Ezekiel Elliott and saying that pretty much that he thinks the decision should be that he shouldn't have any games. It's one of those things where after over a year, the NFL investigated this for over a year, and out of nowhere, they came up with really no evidence, even because the police didn't have any evidence of it. They suspended Ezekiel Elliott anyway. If Ezekiel Elliott did the domestic violence, then I'm all for the suspension, no problem. But my big problem is, I think the NFL needs to get out of being judge, jury, and executioner. They should get out of the business of trying players and not really giving them the true due process. It's been a bad look for the NFL, whether it's Tom Brady and Deflategate, Bountygate. It really has given the NFL a bit of a black eye, or at least a swollen eye, at least. I think it's made Roger Goodell, who has been arguably one of the best commissioner of all time, or one of the best commissioners of all time. But it's a big stain on his legacy is all of these suspensions and all these issues and how the union is really trying to fight him and things like that. I personally think the NFL should get out of trying and prosecuting players. And what I think should be done in its place is the NFL and the players union should go and get a committee of independent investigators and independent judges who have no ties to the union, no ties to the NFL, and let them hear the case and then pass a ruling down. That's what I think should happen. Matter of fact, I would, and if you wanted to appeal it, you could appeal it to another, independent group. But the NFL needs to get out of the business of trying players for crimes and things on the field and off the field. It's kind of one of those things when you're so close to it that you may miss. You're not, a lot of players aren't thinking they're getting a fair shake. But if it was people that had no tie to the NFL or no ties to the players' union, no one could call foul play. I think this would be the best solution for all parties involved. The whole thing about the NFL just going through and just sometimes it seems like they just make up suspensions on the fly. I feel like sometimes there's no rhyme or reason to how they suspend people. I would like to see the independent committee, come up with a rule book of infractions and what you get for first offense. What do you get for the second offense? Have an independent committee come up and hear the case. A second independent committee hear the appeal. And if you want to if you don't want to give take all total power from Roger Goodell, you could give Roger Goodell the ability to pardon someone if for some reason NFL thinks a punishment is too stiff, Roger Goodell would still have the ability to pardon a person. I think that's the best way to go than making the NFL judge, jury, and executioner, because right now it's a bad situation. Someone goes in, they get in trouble. The NFL and Roger Goodell listens to the case. They come back and they say 6-game suspension. Then you're like, you know what? I want to appeal this. Well, guess what? You're appealing it to the exact same person that said 6-game suspension. How is that fair? And I'm not just saying that for Ezekiel Elliott. I'm saying that for Tom Brady. I'm saying it for the New Orleans Saints. I'm saying it for every single player and team that has had an issue and a run-in with Roger Goodell. I think it would take a lot more pressure off of Roger just to have an independent committee that just handles it all. And at the end, someone asks him about, hey, so-and-so got a 5-game suspension by the independent committee. Roger Goodell can say, hey, I don't handle that. It just makes things cleaner. But this whole thing about making the NFL and Roger Goodell the guy who hears the case, picks the sentence, and then hears the appeal, it just doesn't seem fair. I don't know what's going to happen with the Ezekiel Elliott appeal. In my opinion, I don't think the suspension is going to get reduced. I think the answer is going to come out on Monday that the 6-game suspension is held up and he's out for the first 6 games. So if that's the case, the next question dealing with the Dallas Cowboys is, how will they fare if Ezekiel Elliott is out for the first 6 games of the year? It's a tough situation because they have some pretty tough games, especially the very first game against the Giants. And the Giants have a serious shot at winning the NFC East. I personally look at this as a situation that could actually be, I look at it as more of like there could be a silver lining to the fact that Ezekiel Elliott is going to be suspended for 6 games. You have Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden, who have been both Pro Bowlers and who have been 1,000-yard backs. Both of them have been extremely serviceable, especially behind that Dallas offensive line. So you have a situation where if they can hold serve and hold the ship right until Ezekiel Elliott comes back, by week 7, week 8, you have a situation where you have a fresh Ezekiel Elliott starting his season, and that could really get Dallas a situation where they finish the season strong. Because one of the things that happens to running backs take a big beating, and over time, a lot of them slow down. That's the reason why a lot of teams like to go running back by committee. This is a situation where, one, they have 3 really good running backs. Ezekiel is by far the most talented of them all. But you have a situation where Ezekiel can be really fresh. He misses the first 6 games. I think their 7th game is a bye week, so I think it's like I don't quote me on this one. I'm just going by memory. The first 6 games, and then there's a bye week. So right about almost not quite mid-season, but it's getting close to that midpoint of the season. You have an all-star Pro Bowl running back coming in, rested, without injury, ready to go, where Dallas could actually go and could really lean on Ezekiel Elliott the second half of the season. I think this really does, talking about making lemons and turning it into lemonade. This would be that situation where I would look at it and say, that's the biggest, most positive part you could say about that. Because with McFadden and Alfred Morris, they can truly hold the ship. So that's my take on it. On the fact about Ezekiel Elliott, I truly do not think of him. I don't think he has a shot at getting the pill upheld. And so you got to start looking at things as far as what's the upside, or what are the Cowboys going to be looking at this year. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the Detroit Lions and Matthew Stafford's new contract. Stay tuned, and we'll be back.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
All right, we're back, and we were just talking about Ezekiel Elliott, and now we're going to talk about another player out of the NFC, that is the Detroit Lions, Matthew Stafford, who just became the highest paid player in NFL history. He signed a 5-year deal with the Detroit Lions, giving him a guaranteed $27 million a year. That's about $2 million more than the Oakland Raiders gave Derek Carr. There's a lot of guaranteed money on this contract. $92 million is guaranteed, including a $50 million signing bonus. This deal really, this is the world of the NFL quarterback today. And, under this deal, Stafford will be guaranteed $60.5 million at signing. And at the start of year 2, he gets another $82 million. By year 2, he gets another $86 million by year 2, and the last of the guaranteed money, which takes him up to $92 million, will be at the start of year 3. So he'll get that whole $92 million within the first 3 years. That is not a bad way to have to set yourself up for life here. So the question is, when you look at this, there's a lot of people in Detroit that are upset about this contract. And they don't think that Matthew Stafford has been worth it. And I don't agree with them. You look around and you look at Matthew Stafford and you say, he is still a very young quarterback. It seems like he's been in the league forever. But if I remember correctly, Matthew Stafford is only like 28, 29. Let me go check this out. I can't remember how old Stafford is. But I believe he's 29. He's 29 years old. With that being said, a lot of people in Detroit who are not happy about this deal and don't think he's worth it. What is the alternative in Detroit? You're saying let a franchise quarterback who and he is a top 10 quarterback. You're gonna let go of a franchise quarterback to become what, the Jets, the Browns? You have the most important most important player that all teams are looking for. If you don't pay him this guaranteed money, there's a line of people that will. If you're thinking about, you know what, it's not working, it's time to blow up Detroit and start over, you have a 29-year-old quarterback that is already signed. You could blow the Detroit Lions up, start all over fresh, and rebuild with him. That's the great thing about Matthew Stafford. He's young. He's proven to be a top-flight quarterback. When you have a situation like this, you don't let a player of his caliber go, especially with the history that Detroit has, where, when you go back and you look at, Barry Sanders got so fed up with Detroit, he just left right when he's at the threshold of being an all-time leading rusher, and he's just saying, can't take it anymore. You got Megatron, who arguably is one of the greatest receivers of all time, just said, I'm done. Matthew Stafford wants to be in Detroit. He lives in Detroit. He's a Detroit guy. He's become a Detroit guy. You get rid of him, you're not going to get any. There's not a lot of free agents saying, you know what, the place I want to go is Detroit. That's just not going to happen. But you have a guy there that wants to be there. You do whatever you can to keep him there and you keep him happy. Because as long as you have a young quarterback like him, you can start over, you can keep building. You've made the playoffs a few times, where I remember the time when Detroit would be only looking at a first-round draft pick. Now, when you look at the money and you say, man, that sounds like a lot of money, he won't be the highest paid quarterback for long. First off, you got Matt Ryan and Aaron Rodgers. They're the next ones up to sign an extension, and they're going to pass that deal. Kirk Cousins has set himself up that he's going to put that number out of range. With Kirk Cousins not signing, keep signing the franchise tag, and now he's going to be a flat-out young, healthy proven quarterback who's on the open market, there's going to be a bidding war for Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is going to blow that Matthew Stafford's contract out of the water. He's going to fall to, he'll be the second or third highest paid, being third or fourth highest paid quarterback by this time next year. The NFL, that's just the way of the NFL and the way the money is just going toward quarterbacks right now, because it's been proven there's just not enough quarterbacks out there. You look at some of the teams and what's going on with some of the teams that don't have quarterbacks. Detroit should thank their lucky stars. I think this is a really good move on their behalf. Now, speaking of quarterbacks, the Browns have just announced that DeShone Kizer is their new rookie starting quarterback. And I do not like it. This is just not a smart move on the Browns' part. I'm okay with the fact that Kizer has been named the starter. I just think it's just a little early. Not now. If you wanted Kizer to be your quarterback of the future, I think you still could have waited. And a lot of people say the reason why they named Kizer the starting quarterback is because there's a lot of really good quarterbacks that are coming out next year, and they need to figure out what they have in Kizer to determine if they want to draft a quarterback next year. I still say this is a bad move. I say, first off, Kizer is the youngest quarterback in the NFL. I'm talking backup, starter. It doesn't matter. He's the youngest quarterback in the NFL. And with that, I think the Browns should have went with a Brock Osweiler. And this is the reason why. Maybe Brock Osweiler isn't your future. But you have a situation where you have a guy who has experience and has a big contract. So why not make Brock Osweiler your starter? Parade him out there, let him perform, show what he can do. All at the same time, the Kizer is out there watching regular season games, getting used to and seeing firsthand NFL speed, but also getting Brock Osweiler out there, because the Browns aren't going to do anything this year. So the most important thing is get Brock Osweiler out there. Maybe there's a team that has an injury or a situation where they may want to trade for Brock Osweiler and get some type of pick for him. While at the same time you're showing off, you're showing what Brock Osweiler can do, but you're also giving your guy enough time to really prepare for the NFL speed. And then right around week 6, week 8, mid-season, then bring Kizer out and let him play the second half of the year. You don't want to get a situation where you have a young quarterback coming out. He's super young. I mean, like I said, he's the youngest quarterback in the NFL. So you don't want to have your young quarterback coming out and getting nervous and getting happy feet and worrying about the rush because he's just not used to the speed yet. That's how quarterbacks get ruined. And nobody knows more about ruining quarterbacks than the Cleveland Browns. This is why I am not a big fan of starting Kizer right out the gate. Give him time to adjust. Give him time to see game speed. Then throw him out there. So that was my take on that situation. It's also my take on which I think is a good contract, which was for Matthew Stafford. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about another suspension that happened that's possibly happening, and then we're going to talk about some injuries as well. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
All right, so we just got done talking about a couple of quarterbacks as far as the Browns naming DeShone Kizer as their quarterback, and we also talked about Matthew Stafford signing his contract extension. Now we're going to go into a suspension that is about to come down here, which is for Vontaze Burfict, who is going to be suspended. Who's facing a 5-game suspension from a preseason hit that occurred on August 19th versus the Chiefs when he hit fullback Anthony Spencer while Spencer was going out for a pass. Now, give you a little background on Vontaze Burfict. He doesn't have the best reputation, first off. And he's kind of gotten a reputation for some illegal hits, some dirty hits. And so this suspension is more about his reputation than than this hit. Under no circumstances do I think for the hit that he delivered should he be suspended. It was a good, clean, legal hit. I repeat, a good, clean, legal hit. The fullback came through offensive line. He turned like he was going to catch a pass. Burfict hit him. There's that. You can hit a receiver as he's crossing off, the line of scrimmage. He hit him right at the line of scrimmage. It was a shoulder to the chest. It wasn't a headshot. It wasn't a shot to the face mask. It wasn't anything like that. I feel like the NFL just suspended him because of his reputation more than the hit. The hit was a clean, legal hit. This is that situation where, like I was talking about with Ezekiel Elliott, where I think an independent counsel should be looking at all these suspensions, because this is a situation where a guy should not be suspended 5 games, and he's facing 5 games for a clean hit. There needs to be something done to protect the players from, and protect the NFL, because I just think it's a bad look that the NFL is having here by the way they're suspending players. It makes the public look like the NFL is full of thugs and bad apples. Just have an independent committee pass down all the punishments. That way the union don't have an issue, the NFL doesn't look bad, and the players feel like they're getting a fair shake. That's just my take on that hit, because if you go back and look at it, go online and look at it, literally it's a shoulder pad to the chest. And I know the NFL was trying to go more with a situation where they're trying to protect against defensive receivers this year, but this guy was literally on the offensive. I mean, he was on at the line of scrimmage when he got hit. He was turning back to catch a pass, or pretend like he was going to catch a pass. It should not. I just don't feel like it should have been a penalty. Matter of fact, there wasn't a penalty on the field, let alone a reason to suspend a guy 5 games. That's just my take. Now, speaking of preseason and big hits and injuries, the Patriots just suffered a massive injury. Star receiver and safety blanket to Tom Brady, Julian Edelman, is now out for the year. And this is a big loss, because a lot of people looked at the Patriots as a team that was going to repeat. And I still say, when you look at this team, only the Patriots could go through and lose a player the caliber of a Julian Edelman and still say, we're okay. Because they have so much depth. They just, they have Danny Amendola, who's going to come in and fill in for Julian Edelman, that's the perfect guy to come in and fill in. They just picked up Brandon Cook. They got a number of running backs that can go in the slot. They're so loaded that the train is just going to keep on going. I don't think that you got Gronkowski, you got Allen at tight end, and Gronkowski. They have so many weapons that this is not going to derail any shot at them contending for the championship or the Super Bowl. But it goes back to this conversation that a lot of networks have been having. And that is it worth having these preseason games? When you're looking around and you have players like Julian Edelman getting injured and being knocked out for the year, it's not worth it. Preseason, I don't watch preseason. I mean, I go through, I check the highlights, I go through, I check the box scores. But if I don't have to watch a preseason game, I skip it. I think if teams are talking about we need preseason to evaluate players, 4 preseason games is just too many. I say at least cut it down to 1 or 2 preseason games. It does not need to be 4 games. That's just my take. I just don't think. Over the years, there's just been too many players that have been lost in meaningless games. And I know the NFL doesn't want to give up that revenue because they make season ticket holders buy and pay for preseason games. But there has to be a solution because, college football doesn't have a preseason. And I know, the NFL it's a much higher level, a much faster pace. Cut it down to 1 game. Cut it down to 1 game, and teams can do some scrimmages. But with scrimmages, you could do everything that you could do in a game and evaluate players just by having scrimmages instead of having a full-on game. That's my final take of the day. I appreciate you guys tuning in. My name is Tate. I will be your host this season for the NFL podcast, GSMC football podcast. Thank you for listening, and to all, a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.